Hi, everybody. This is Benjamin Smith, the editor of Oldtime Central, coming to you from over in Berlin, Germany. It's nice to welcome you to another installment of our weekly interview series with old-time musicians from around the world. And this week, we're very excited to have Mitch Depew over in Granada, Spain. Hey, Mitch, how's it going?
Hey, good. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. A little tired, but nice to be talking to you. Well, would you be willing to start us out with a tune? Tell us what it is and
Yeah, for sure.
get us in the mood.
Decided to just playing a few tunes today from two of my favorite Kentucky fiddlers. So this is Luther Strong's version of Liza Jane. You know.
Yeah, that was very nice. You said that was Luther Strong's Liza Jane?
Yeah, a weird
That's
three-part,
nice.
but the parts wherever he wants to.
Really? Okay. But then the parts themselves are pretty set, is that right? Like there's not tons of variation
Yeah,
within each part.
yeah. I mean, with some notable exceptions, he's a really clear, straight fiddle player, but he does like to compile things differently a lot of times. And I'm gonna play at least one other of his that is compiled in a strange way too. But they're like those solo fiddlers that explore the tune in weird ways as they're playing them.
Right, right. It means that you need to have good accompanists if you're playing it with banjo and guitar.
Exactly. Or just be like, okay, I'm gonna straighten it out for this setting.
Right, right. And where did you learn that one from?
I learned that from the Luther Strong recording. It was an Alan Lomax thing.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously lots of rocking and pulsing and like little caught bottom notes there and stuff like that.
Yeah, always got to throw in some personal flavor, I suppose, but
Right.
try to capture at least some aspects of Luther's playing in that.
Yeah. And I mean, when you go about learning a tune like that from the recording, how do you do it?
That's a good question. I suppose it depends on the tune, and it depends a lot on the player too. With Luther, like you said, really clear, really powerful fiddler. And it's pretty easy most of the time to hear like the notes that he's playing and like these little weird, ornaments and this and that. So with his, I do oftentimes do the old slow down, pitch correct process and really dig
Sure.
into it. Whereas with Hiram Stamper, for example, which I'm going to play a few of his tunes later, I mean, his playing is super archaic, and I'm going to play some A tunes from him, and he's tuned closer to cross E. It's like so low.
Okay, crazy.
Yeah, so for him, I find a lot of times if I slow it down, I almost lose the tune. So I kind of, with his tunes and with other fiddle players like that, I oftentimes just listen to them over and over and over and over again and try to like get the flavor in my head a little bit and learn it and then relearn it and so on.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
different learning methods. Yeah, lots of people do seem to like the amazing slowdowner or whatever
Yeah,
people use.
a good
Um,
tool.
it is. It's amazing what you can. I mean, it's amazing what you don't hear if
Yeah,
you listen to things. I mean, or well, maybe I should say, I'm amazed what I don't hear
I can relate with that 100%.
when I when I when I just listen to things up to speed, and then you can hear so much of the like the details and the subtlety.
Totally.
I wonder what's it is. I mean, I think there was a point relatively early on when I was learning to play old time fiddle that I realized, I think a lot of people are drawn to what sounds like sort of a driving, relatively straight, melodically straightforward, um, repetitive style that's not like overly pedantic about technique and intonation precision and things like that.
Uh,
But then when you start digging into stuff, then you're like, oh my God, this is actually about what really makes someone's sound and what makes it so cool are the tiniest little details.
Totally. Yeah, there's just like so much tiny subtlety and yeah, intonation. I mean, intonation is really important in some of these tunes, I think, of just like going a touch sharp on a note or a touch flat or things like that really give a lot of personality to a tune, I think.
Right, right. Yeah, I think there's something kind of, I mean, it's then a little bit like an insider joke, right? That the beauty is something that like uh, people who haven't really dug into it deeply can't hear because it's just far too
Right.
it's
You're
far too
playing.
subtle. But I genuinely don't know. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you even get into playing old time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was kind of a process, I suppose. I didn't have any, family history or, I mean, I'm from South Jersey. There's not too much of, an old time tradition in South Jersey. Um, but I guess I got into it actually starting, like I got a guitar, strangely enough, when I was studying here in Granada. So good 12 years ago now. And I got a guitar because I wanted to learn how to play like Mississippi John Hurt and got really into that for a bit. Uh, and then just ended up getting my hands on a banjo and thinking that I'd try to work on finger picking. And I just kind of found clawhammer banjo and thought that was cool. Um, so I ended up contacting the dad of one of my best friends growing up, who I knew was, a really good player. I didn't know what he played, but I just wanted to like, pick his brain about, I was looking at getting a new guitar and this and that. And I hadn't seen him for a long time. And he asked me what I was playing, and I was like, well, I'm starting to learn clawhammer banjo. And he was like, come over, you know. So I went to his place, and it turned out like he mainly plays Irish music. I mean, great musician, like plays, you know, fiddle and concertina and guitar and tenor banjo. And turned out that he had built his own 5-string banjo years ago and was pretty into clawhammer in the past. So he gave me a bunch of these awesome recordings, like a bunch of like the classic, you know, 3-disc clawhammer banjo collection. And so he just kind of hooked me up with all of this really good, straight up old time music that I had never heard. And I then moved back to Spain with those recordings and a banjo and a fiddle that I didn't know how to play, and just kind of went at it that way, I guess, for a while. Of just, you know,
like trying to imitate the recordings as best you could.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
so
when
that was
this is like the late noughties or something like that.
the what?
Like the late naughty, like in the end of it, like just before 2010 or so, or when is
So
this?
this was 2010 to 2012 when I was doing that. And then I moved back to the States for a bit. I was in Ohio for 2 years. Where I was lucky enough, there were two people in the town where I was in Bowling Green, Lucy Long and Steve O'Regan, who kind of just like helped me out a lot. Lucy, again, like gave me tons of great recordings and ridiculous amount of Bruce Green stuff, which changed my life.
For
And
sure.
Steve, in the best way, was an old time curmudgeon where we'd play tunes all the time and he'd just be like, don't do that. What are you doing? Which is really good. And they took me to spend a weekend at Dan Gellert's place there my second year. And that was also really amazing. I wasn't at all much of a player then, but Dan was really cool and talked to me a whole lot about rhythm and listening to James Brown and in the context of old time music, and kind of, I don't know, in the long run, definitely changed my approach to it for sure.
Mm-hmm. You mean that particular meeting with Dan,
Yeah,
or what?
yeah, totally.
And why? I mean, what was the essence of that?
Oh, I mean, there was like a lot to it for sure, but just really like thinking about rhythm in a different way, and also trying to focus myself a little bit. I guess I was kind of all over the place musically at that point. And just being like, okay, like I'm just gonna like pick a handful of fiddlers that I'm really into and try to get into their style and start to learn a little bit about that, and I guess listen a lot more carefully and pay more attention to what I was doing too.
Right, right. Interesting. Does it, I mean, this is just coming up for me. It seems like there's kind of a dichotomy in the community between people who, maybe learn growing up, from people in their community,
Mm.
who often have, a local repertoire and sort of community agreed upon ways of playing things more or less, right?
Mm.
But not they're often not exactly one way, right? They're close enough that everybody can play along and everybody has a kind of their own version of it, but it's not one version. Whereas it seems like there are a lot of the folk who come to old time having not grown up with it, almost take it on as a discipline and
Mm.
get really into, like that piece of advice, which I think lots of people have gotten and made serious headway with, of saying, look, okay, yeah, you might be interested at the beginning and learn a bunch of stuff that you don't really know, but it's good at some point to be like, okay, pick a couple musicians that you're really, really into and just like dig into their style. But it's almost like a study then at that point, which I think you learn a ton from, but it's very different. It's a very different way of learning.
For sure. I mean, I guess, I mean, I'm far from an expert on this, but I would guess the difference would be, people that are born and raised in a tradition like that end up listening to certain people from their area and learning a specific style based on that. Of course, everybody, I mean, whether you want to or not, you end up sounding like you. But it's just where the ideas that you're borrowing, I guess, come from. So I guess people like in that area, and I mean, it is definitely a living tradition. So people from a certain area are going to have that repertoire and are going to be listening to these certain fiddle players or certain banjo players when they're growing up, and I'm sure end up playing like them somehow. Whereas for me, at least, or for a lot of people, I'm sure, coming from outside of that world and then all of a sudden being like, oh, Slippery Hill, there are thousands of things to listen to, and I have no idea who any of these fiddle players are, and just picking a tune from there or there, it's, I think, can be difficult to then center on like, what do I want to do with this music, maybe, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's too much. There's too much choice.
Information overload. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have another tune you'd like to play us? Maybe a
Yeah,
banjo
sure.
tune, since we were talking about banjo, but it can be what you want.
Yeah, I'll do a fun little banjo tune from not Kentucky.
What are you gonna play us?
I'm gonna do a Wade Ward tune.
What tuning are you in there for all the banjo people?
Double C right now.
Okay, nice.
So this is just his version. I think pretty sure he called it John Lover's Gone, but poor little Johnny's gone, or whatever anybody called it.
Very nice. I like double C.
Yeah, it's good. Full sound for sure.
Yeah. It's very C, but you know, C is always very C.
As it is. It's pretty deep.
But you're, so I mean, I'm sure of interest to lots of people. You're not in the United States. You're not in the United Kingdom. You're over in Spain, which is not typically one of the centers of old time music. How did you make it out there?
Yeah, it's certainly not a hotbed of old time music. However, this banjo is from the peninsula. This is made by a buddy of mine just outside of Barcelona. But there are only, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 people that I know of that are into old time music in the Iberian Peninsula. and none around here, although I do play tunes with people and I've taught them some old time tunes. But yeah, I guess I ended up here just because I really like it here. Like I first came traveling on my own when I was like 19 and then studied here for a semester in Granada. And then, like I mentioned before, I moved here in 2010, was here for 2 years, and then came back 5 years ago. Was in the Northwest in Galicia for the last 4 years, and then just moved down here a year ago. So there's another, much like how getting into old time music was a process, moving here was also like that, of just like, oh, I'll do this now, I'll do that. Oh, here I am.
Right. And why Spain and not Ohio or Jersey or other places that obvious opportunities?
To maybe it's a biased decision, but I do think that this is objectively nicer than living in New Jersey. But sorry, other people that might be in New Jersey. I spent a long time there. I love New Jersey in some ways, but I don't know. I just always really loved living here. It's just like, it's a beautiful place. I don't know if I could show just a little flavor. I don't know how much you can see in there, but I mean, we're looking at the Alhambra. It's pretty beautiful. The weather's nice. It's a really laid back lifestyle. I don't know. It's just kind of worked out for me in a lot of ways. And like I said, I was in Galicia for 4 years, and then my lady friend moved down here, so I followed.
I see.
And now I'm back in Granada again. What's that?
That's a good reason to move, I said.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It told me I'm definitely in like musical solitude in a lot of ways, at least old time solitude. There's a wonderful Irish music scene here, and I do play with those guys, but old time, not a whole lot. So I end up just playing alone a lot, which I really enjoy doing. I miss playing with people, and I normally get that out of my system at things like Cliff Top, but that didn't happen this year. So it's been a little bit tough in that way, but
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit before we came on air, as it were, that it seems like for lots of people the community is a little bit on hold, just because so much of what we do is centered around just jamming with people. I mean, that's really sort of the point, right? And just sitting at home and woodshedding, or trying to dig into the last crevices of Slippery Hill is not quite the same when you can't go out and share it with people and play tunes with other people.
Yeah, sharing it. I mean, I definitely that kind of a thing keeps me motivated too. Like getting to play with people and being like, oh my god, now I want to work on so much, or excited to try new things or whatever. Yeah. And I also, from time to time would get visits here from old time players or something, and that's also been kind of put on hold. So.
Right. Yeah.
Deep.
I mean, the same here in Berlin. I mean, even, we do have a good handful of players here in Berlin who are pretty serious, and then sort of, an electron cloud of people outside of that who play, but not, maybe don't spend quite as much time doing it, but still, we have people to play with regularly, but yeah, not since March, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So I will admit, we did have one in June. We had one little sort of impromptu 2.5-day festival at a park.
Oh, nice.
It was, mostly people from Berlin. A couple people came in from out of town. And we just sort of, nobody camped or anything like that, but we jammed from noon till the early hours of the morning for a couple days, and that was Yeah, that was a rare treat this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right on. Yeah, hopefully those things are back at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's an open question, isn't it? Right? I mean, like what's happened? There's so many disciplines, right? Like theater and dance and stand-up
Right.
comedy and all of these things that only really happen live
Mhm.
that are just so on hold. That's kind of
Right. I mean, there were, yeah, like the quarantine happy hour concert has been a really wonderful thing, and like, people have been making an effort, which is cool. Yeah,
yeah, true.
it isn't the same, but it's good that you know still living on in some way or another.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true. Okay, so you got
So,
you
yeah.
you were talking about playing us. You gonna play us a Hiram Stamperton or what you got?
Well, I think I'll do another Luther Strong one real quick.
Okay.
And try. We were talking about intonation a little bit before, and this one's got a very important note. This is a tune I've only heard from him. I don't know if there are other versions around that he called Adeline. Um,
Very nice. And where was no? Don't put your fiddle down. Where was the note? Which was the note that I? That,
that little, that little
okay.
thing.
Nice.
That little slightly sharp C.
Right. Slightly sharp C.
Yeah.
Yeah. My controversial theory about that is just that it's it's like more it's effort to do a low two or a high two, whereas it's easier to just kind of smack it down in the middle.
I suppose so. However, in that tune in particular, in the B part, it's quite definitively a C sharp, and then for that note, he lowers it a
Right.
touch.
Right.
But I do think that sometimes that is the case.
Well, it's like in furniture making, like you might roughly plane the boards that are on the inside or on the underside of a table and do the ones on the outside that are, prettier. It's not you don't do the ones on the inside rough because you can't do them better. It's just because it's not essential in that particular place.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, with him, I mean, he was a crazy good fiddle player. I mean, very technically wonderful, and like both. I mean, his intonation is great. So I do think in that case, it's probably more of like a personality choice to the
Right.
tune. Um, yeah. Whereas I'll do a couple Hiram tunes that are that have some spicy notes too.
Right. Right. I
Yeah,
mean, I did that a
in
few
his,
years ago. I was listening to a version of Lester McCumber's Arkansas Traveler, and
mm,
like on the B part, there's like some very clearly not G or G sharps,
yeah,
very clearly somewhere in the middle, and loud, and on the top E string, like hard to miss.
yeah,
And I remember thinking to I mean, whenever I think I can remember the first time I heard it, I was like, oh. And then the second time I heard it, I was like, no, well, wait a minute, actually, that's kind of cool.
yeah,
Um, and then
very
I
cool.
remember showing it to other people, and they were like, ugh. I was like, no, no, you don't get it. It's cool. And so I was then curious as to whether it was intentional or not, which is of course it's hard to, with Lester not around anymore, it's hard to know that. But I went back and listened to other recordings. There were fortunately other recordings of him playing that tune when he was different ages,
Yeah,
and he does it the same, right?
right.
So it's like, well, I mean, you can at least clearly say whether it was intentional or not. That's the way he played it,
Mhm.
right? It's not that wasn't like an artifact of like finger of old age or of
Thing where he was feeling pretty stiff or something. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so in Hiram Stamper's case, there are a lot of in the Bruce Green collection on Berea, he has a handful of visits with him and recordings of tunes, and you hear like, I think in every one of those visits from, I think they range from 77 to 89. He like pretty much always plays the version Brushy Fork of Johns Creek, and it always, I mean, through that like 12-year period or whatever it is, like always did that same kind of stuff. And I think that's definitely like very telling for style, somebody just being like, this is the way that I want to play it, and now I'm going to keep playing it for a really long time.
Right. And how do you then feel about, I mean, specifically with fiddler, I mean, it's mostly fiddlers, I guess, that I pay attention to, with those intonation issues. How do you feel about then playing with guitar players?
I mean, I think it's fine to have like a little intonation tension going on, or same with a fretted banjo or something where the banjo player would have to choose a note or work around it in some way, where the fiddle player can play that thing in the middle. And I kind of dig that. I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Obviously, as long as it's not way too out there and actually
Right.
just playing tune, if there are specific notes or something like that gives some personality, I think that's cool.
Right. And I think it came up for me several times because I would first hear the tune and think, this doesn't sound quite right, and then I'd learn it and be like, no, that's the way the tune goes, and then suddenly it sounds right. It sounds right just the way it is, and then you get a guitar player coming along, and suddenly what you're playing sounded to me wrong again, right? Because like the
Yeah,
like the precision of the diatonic scale gets imposed back over the melody. You're like,
yeah,
no, don't play that theoretically right note because it doesn't work here.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's kind of a tune by tune decision, but a lot of times I'm kind of more drawn to like sparse harmony, I guess, because of that. Maybe it leaves it a little bit more open rather than, I mean, in a tune like Brushy Fork, for example, like instead of going to that 6 chord that a lot of people like to do, maybe just ride in the 1 or something and
Right.
allow that space to be taken up, with some crunchy intonation or something.
Right. So do you have a Hiram Stamper tune for us?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna play actually one that I got from one of those Bruce Green visits with him, which I had never heard before anywhere. It was his version of Kleckle Hen, which is pretty cool. So I'm gonna try.
Very nice. And that definitely works. That definitely works solo very, very well.
Yeah, he was very much a solo fiddle player.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of that stuff could easily get lost with too many other people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he had, I think, one of like the most full styles I've ever heard. It's just like crazy bowing stuff going on and just so much depth. And he definitely explores the tunes in a pretty crazy way. Like
Mm-hmm. In
into his
terms of
style.
like going into digging into different variations and different stuff that's going on, or
Totally. Yeah. And really just like changing the, I don't know, adding beats here and there or putting a part where that part never came up before or something like that. Yeah.
right, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I know we wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like playing old time in Europe generally. I don't know,
Oh, for
you've been over here for a while. What sort of, I mean, you said the scene in Spain is tiny.
yeah,
Um, who do
not very
you
different, I would say.
who do you who other what other uh, old time scenes in Europe have you been able to explore?
Not as much as I would like. I mean, I made it to the UK for Gainsborough, not this past one, but the one before, and that was really cool.
Hmm.
And get meet a lot of people there and such. I do this little thing in Barcelona every year. They have like a little weekend bluegrass camp, and I've been doing the old time fiddle class there for a few years, and
Okay.
that's kind of created a really cool scene. This guy Sylvain from France, who maybe you've come across. He's like at every old time event in Europe. He's an old time junkie, and just like a handful of other people there that I've met. And then I organized this little old time gathering in Santiago where I used to live last year, and we were going to do that again this year before coronavirus thing set in. But that was very cool. I kind of got to connect with a handful of people from the UK and Ireland and France, and
Right.
Bettina from Germany came. I don't know if you know her.
I
And
do. Yes.
yeah, so we had a cool scene.
That's cool. And
Yeah,
how many people were there?
there were I think 16 in total. It was a pretty small thing, but it was really cool.
And then you had some teachers over from the States, or
Yeah, it Joseph DeCosimo came and Luke Richardson, um,
nice.
which they're both amazing fiddle players and banjo players. So there was a lot of like fiddle and banjo nerd stuff going on, and it was good. It was kind of like my selfish thing of being like, I'm gonna like bring a bunch of people here to play with that I want to play with, and it worked out beautifully. So hopefully we'll be doing that again. Yeah.
Right. Because when that was in May or
That was,
something, or,
yeah, it was like in the middle of May. Mhm.
and you guys like just rented a house where you all could stay, or
Yeah, we had this big property kind of right on the edge of Santiago. There were two houses and like this big. It was next to a river in like a forest, kind of. It was nuts because it was like a 15-minute walk to the center of town. So it was very cool, and just played tunes kind of nonstop for I guess 3 or 4 days. It was great.
right. That's cool.
Yeah.
So actually getting out and playing with people, you sort of have to leave Spain, is that right? Or
Yeah, in general, either that or have people come here, which has happened a lot. And if anybody that is watching this is an old time player and wants to come to Spain at some point, let me know.
right. Once the traveling starts happening again, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
we
it's
had
kind
the same. I mean, we would have, I mean, especially once the scene was slightly more established, we would, sort of, if people were coming through Berlin, they would just know from either friends or friends of friends. They'd be like, "Oh, I heard there's some old time people in Berlin," and we'd get random people but really nice, good people coming through every few months, just show up and either play tunes or give a workshop or a little concert or something like that. And it was nice, for being in the middle of, being in Central Europe. It was nice to have a little bit of old time variety.
Fresh old time coming in. Yeah,
right. Exactly. But not right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Should I try another Hiram tune real quick?
Yeah, do that, and then I'll ask you my favorite question. But I want to hear the Hiram tune first.
Oh, great. Favorite questions. Yeah, I'm gonna play is Betty Martin, which is another weird, awesome tune.
Very nice. That's fun.
Yeah, Betty Martin, weird version of Fire in the Mountain.
Right. So you have to come to Fire in the Mountain and play it.
I would love to.
Yeah. Have you been before or not?
I have not. No, I'd love to.
All right. Well, yeah. I can't decide which is more depressing, canceling Clifftop or canceling Fire in the Mountain. But
it's a heavy words right there, man. Yeah. So what's your favorite question?
Well, no, before we get to my favorite question, I want to ask is there stuff that you'd like people to know about? Like, or do you teach, or do you have
Yeah.
line that you'd like to draw people's attention to? Or
I mean, I have taught. I don't really do that too often. But I've taught, I guess, more at like events like the Barcelona thing or a little gathering in Switzerland, things like that that'll come up from time to time. But I don't do a whole lot of teaching. I did make a recording a couple of years ago with Nick Stillman, who's banjo and fiddle player from New York, I guess Vermont. And yeah, he and I just kind of winged it. Like we just got together in Brooklyn when I was around and guy Dante Portela came with some mics and stuff, and we just
Okay.
hadn't decided on the tunes or anything. We're just like, okay, let's like record 10 or 11 tunes or whatever. And it turned out well. So that is on Bandcamp. If you just look up, I think we just gave it the straight up name of Nick and Mitch Play Old Time Tunes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Dante records them.
And Dante records them, yes.
I'm sure it sounds good. Let's check that out.
Fun. Yeah, check it out for sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So my favorite question. I mean, I'm always I'm curious. There are lots of ways to spend our time before we die, and I'm curious why to spend so much time playing old time.
Yeah. All right, let me think of like a not superficial way to respond to that. That's
well,
pretty.
I don't know, maybe the superficial answer might also just be this, doesn't have to.
Yeah.
There are lots of answers,
Yeah, I don't know. For me, I mean, also because the vast majority of the time that I spend playing music is not socializing through music. I do love that aspect of old time music, and I'm really craving it now, with like not being able to get that out of my system at Clifftop this year. And but I guess because of that, it's just like it feels so good and it's so enriching that like I don't know, I try to play every day and dedicate a good amount of time to it every day, and that's kind of like I don't know, one of like the most enriching parts of my life, I guess, of just digging into a new tune or finding a little nook that I hadn't noticed before, or finally getting something to work with the bow that I didn't know how to do before. So I think more than anything for me, it's just this personal practice of, I don't know, just like really enjoying something. And I don't know, I just like love nerding out about old time music on my own.
Right.
So I guess that's it, of just being like, I don't know, this is like what enriches me, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a common. Yeah, again, there are lots of different players and lots of different ways to participate in the music, but it certainly seems that like a good chunk of the people who get a lot of attention and who I guess we think of as good players, just based on their sound and repertoire and things like that, are people who really enjoy practicing and enjoy digging into the details and
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't like that, then
Yeah, you could still have a lot of fun with the music or something, but I guess there's like a certain, I don't know, my favorite part of old time is trying to discover those weird little personal quirks and stuff like that within the music.
right, yeah, no, I got that.
Mm.
And so what else do you do? What does a typical day look like in the life of Mitch Depew in Granada, Spain?
A typical day aside from playing fiddle tunes.
I'm interested where the fiddle tunes fit in.
Oh, the fiddle tunes fit in a good part of the day normally. I definitely spend a few hours doing that, and I keep the fiddle down here. This is like the spare bedroom / fiddle shed / where our kitten sleeps at night. So this is my fiddle space, but the banjo stays upstairs. So I pick up the banjo all the time, and yeah, much to my girlfriend's delight. But yeah, so typical day, I don't know. I have like a remote job, so kind of have a loose schedule with that as like a text editor, like essay editor and stuff. So that frees me up a lot. So I don't know, I spend a lot of time enjoying the city, walking around and stuff, working for a few hours here and there and playing tunes. And so I don't know, typical day just is kind of revolved around those basic things of like a little bit of work, a little bit of strolling around town, and a bunch of music.
Nice.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I've also had those questions before. People are, it's like, I think the last time, probably the last time was it Clifftop, and people are like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I live in Germany. They're like, why do you live in Germany? I was
Yeah.
like, because it's nice, you know,
It's a good place to live.
a good place to live. I think I might have said something less politically correct than that, maybe the obverse of what I just said, but there you go.
Understandable.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what else you got?
Yeah. Should I do, I guess, round things out with a, we did talk about brushy fork before, so I'll give that a go. Um,
Oh yeah,
it's a tough one, but I love
but
it.
you're warmed up now.
More or less. Yeah. So it
So this is
seems to me,
Tyler Camper's Brushy Fork of Johns Creek.
yeah. And it seems to me like this was probably like, in his top three favorite tunes because he just seemed to play it all the time. I mean,
Mm.
even in like home recordings, it'll be like a 45-minute thing with a bunch of tunes and he'll play Brushy Fork like 3 times.
Right, right. Well, do you notice that too? That like there's some tunes that you'll learn them and you'll be super into them for a while, and then it sort of you know
Totally. Yeah.
tails off, and then there are other tunes that like reach this they reach this plateau where you're like, you know what? Like I mean, I'm not as crazy about it as when I learned it, but I still love playing this tune all the time.
Like
You
a
know,
personal chestnuts.
yeah, personal chestnuts, and your friends are either like, yeah, that tune, or oh god, not that one
Yeah. 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 So this is definitely a Hiram personal chestnut. Do my best.
Sounded pretty good to me. Well, thanks so much, Mitch. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thank
It's nice
you.
of you to make it to the Old Time Central European Radio Hour.
Yeah, nice
Rare edition.
to talk to you. I think the longest conversation we had before was at a bathroom in Clifftop.
That's quite possible. That's quite possible. I even have fond memories of that bathroom at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. I wish you the best, and hopefully we can meet up sooner in person and play some actual tunes.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks
All right,
a lot.
man.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Yep. Ciao.